Here we go. Maybe that work. It's a little bit better. Hold up a little bit. Okay, yeah, that's too bright. Hang on, change. That's a little bit better. Okay, let's just stop that. We'll do the overhead only. Okay, so here we are, chapters 4 and 5 of The Invisible Rainbow. If you've not been following along, hello, my name's Liz. We have been reading The Invisible Rainbow, which is a history of the body and electricity by Dr. Brad Furstenberg, and it is a very informative book. You can locate on my page a playlist which discusses the chapters that we have reviewed prior to now. We're going to be doing 2 chapters at once because they just could not be separated for me mentally. Just everything they talked about needed to be talked about together. And I'm having a really bad eye day, so let's be very, very aware that I'm struggling to read even my own writing because of my eyesight today. But I can't let this go any longer. Okay, so chapter 4 was known as The Road Not Taken. Chapter 4 started out with, in 1790, European society basically had created a European science foundation, and they had started to identify a crisis. This crisis was believed to be caused by an identity crisis circling around 4 substances, and these substances were light, electricity, magnesium, and caloric, which is heat. Calorie intake, body burns it, heat. They believed that all these were related and connected to life. So the whole scientific society in Europe was kind of going through an identity crisis because they believed these 4 substances were what animated the world, and but other scientists and doctors and stuff were branching out and starting to study other things differently and combating or going against the themes of the day. So during this time, physicians noted that electricity was an electric and elastic spirit. That's what we're calling electricity now, and we're in the 1790s. Electricity was known as an element that is to us more intimate than the very air that we breathe. That was no lay in 1746. So he is now being really, really brought into the European Science Foundation and Society. They're using his perspectives that electricity is an element that is more intimate to us than the very air we breathe. But they're struggling now at the 1790s, starting to see other things occur when the people of the old school believed that, there are 4 substances that animate the world: light, electricity, magnesium, and caloric, heat. But now people are starting to see something's not quite right. So Luigi Galvani's, he did an experiment with brass and electricity that made a frog's leg move. I think you've probably heard Sabrina talk about this in one of her last videos in the last week or 2. I watched so many of them, it's hard for me to keep them straight. Also, we chatted this morning. I've uploaded some stuff that she sent me that she thought was very interesting, and I thought it was interesting just because of what we've been reading together. So when Luigi Galvani made the frog leg move with electricity and brass, he called it animal electricity. Well, Volta, the other scientist, he went against this, and he said, no, I think electricity comes from the animals. When Galvani thought electricity was provided to the animals, Volta thought it came from within the animals. So they did a lot of experimentation, and they tried to delineate this using external stimuli only, and this became the whole external stimuli experimentation with electricity era. And let me tell you what, it was a doozy. So this is where things really began to clash, and they called it the scientific clash of centuries. And basically it was the old school and new school that could not come together to agree to disagree, basically, on where electricity came from and how it was affecting everyone. So Volta's invention of the battery basically defined that electricity could be contained and found in various things. So everybody kind of hush-hushed and then was like, okay, electricity basically is everywhere. If it can be contained and put somewhere, obviously everybody just started swallowing that electricity was everywhere. The scientific clash era ended with science and society acknowledging that the life force could not be subjected to experimentation. So basically, they were saying it's not consistent, we can't test it, we don't know how to test it, we don't know how to use stimuli to test it, and then we've got to look at everybody as being an individual. Basically, they said electricity was separated from physiology and biology in mainstream views. I found this very interesting because they started saying, oh, we can't test it, we can't measure it, we can't isolate it, we can't stimulate it. And then they started pulling electricity away from the body and separating the physiological electricity from the biological electricity. And the more they turned it into a biological electricity, the more it pulled away from physiological, from the human body in the, society's mind. So they basically pulled it away from the human body and threw it out into a biological field. And they did that in a mainstream media context, which makes me think they did a separation for a reason, right? They did that mental separation for a reason. So this created the experimentation of electrical edifices. And my dog's snoring, I'm sorry. And what Nole was noted as saying, I believe, was that thus was born a permanent electrical edifice whose tentacles snakes everywhere. Which sounds oddly like a network, doesn't it? So they're starting to see the electricity, even though they're just now starting to test it in physiological and biological and natural ways, they can see that it is networked through everything. Hi, everybody. I am about blind today with my eyes, so excuse me if I don't try to communicate too much, but I'm barely able to read my own writing today because my eyes are so bad. And none of my glasses are helping, so we're just gonna get through this. In 1859, they began to electrify London. In the 1860s, a glass of ale was also sold with a shock for 4p. English citizens began to despise the interjection of electricity everywhere, and they hated that it was showing up in commerce. Of course, then we had the telegraph pop up, and that began to use people's rooftops to supply signal line. That began to disperse, through all of society, basically. In 1860, the Universal Private Telegraph Company opened its doors. But the actual electrification of Europe began in 1839, which was like 20 years earlier, because they had to basically start the telegraph with the magnetic stuff on the Great Western Railway. So what people in 1860, when they started seeing the telegraph go everywhere, what they didn't understand was it had already been in use in some ways in the Great Western Railway since the late 1830s, early 1840s. Electrification of America began shortly thereafter. The Ohio Railroad used Ohio Railroad, y'all. Migraines, flares, disorder. I'm having a does not compute day, so just deal with me. The Ohio Railroad used electronic doorbells and connected lines for like impulse to ring bells at boarding houses and stuff, so they'd know whose room was wanting service and stuff. And by 1850, the telegraph had over 22,000 miles in the U.S. 22,000 miles of wire in the U.S. by the 1850s. By 1875, there were 30,000 miles of submarine line and enough overall line to encircle the globe 30 times. That was by 1875. So this half-deaf doctor comes along. His name is Dr. George Miller Beard. He was published in the Boston Medical and Surgical Journal in 1869, which later became the New England Journal of Medicine. He collaborated with Thomas Edison in 1875 and was investigating an etheric force. And he felt that there was a new disease of the modern civilization, and it was perhaps caused by all of this stuff that was going on because it had been previously unseen and unknown. He named it neurasthenia, or weak nerves. He said it seemed to attack at random and it didn't have any causal relations and it wasn't medically known. Today, electricity is known as the cause. One of Dr. Beard's most noted quotes, as he actually suffered from this himself, said that none of us can imagine what it feels like to live on an unwired earth. Imagine that for just 5 seconds, guys. So then came along Professor of Physics John Trowbridge. He began testing signals and signals with the telegraph lines and how it could hold more than just signals and impulses. That eventually led to the telephone. But Trowbridge concluded that the Earth was being electronically or electrically attacked. And he said he was one of the first ones to notice that this use and study of electricity started to change the language, because what had previously been called a nervous condition, it was changed to neurological, and the alternate of that was nervous disorders. They started to separate because of electricity and electrical impulses on the body. They started to change the medical terminology. So we started to see neurological issues, and then we started to see nervous disorders. And this created a lot of confusion medically. A lot of the doctors were very upset about it because up to that point, it had, been looked at as a very black or white issue. And it threw a wrench in a lot of their diagnoses on hysterical illnesses and hypochondria, because now they had to now they had to discern disorders as being a hysterical illness or someone suffering from hypochondria. And you can see how electrical impulses that cause neurasthenia or weak nerves also threw a wrench in that when they had to separate it from nervous disorders. So doctors at this time were really having to wrap their brains around a lot. So many doctors, such as Margaret Abigail Cleves, and she was in 1894, she was 40 years old and diagnosed with this neurasthenia. She had done heavy experimentation specializing in electrotherapy. In 1895, she opened the New York Electrotherapeutic Clinic and Laboratory and Dispensary. Soon thereafter, she had a complete break and passed in 1917. She was noted to have said, "I knew neither peace nor comfort, night nor day." Now we're into chapter 5. Dr. Abigail Cleves, Margaret Abigail Cleves, primarily suffered from, listen to this, fatigue, poor digestion, headaches, heart palpitations, tinnitus. She smelled and tasted phosphorus. She lost hearing in one ear. She became affected by atmospheric changes, electrical changes like storms and weather. She described her illness as a crushing great weight, bowing me to the earth. Oddly enough, one of the first documented electrical occupational hazards was noted as the telegrapher's cramp. Telegraphers also experienced heart palpitations, dizziness, insomnia, weakened eyesight, exhaustion, depression, memory loss, and some descended into insanity. And this made me remember something. As a child, I used to love to watch Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman, mostly because of the horses. I love to look at the horses that they used in movies. But if you remember Horace, the telegraph guy, I think that was his name, Horace. The long-faced guy, Horace, worked in the telegraph office. There is a whole episode devoted to him going into a form of melancholia that they had a very difficult time pulling him out of, to the point where he attempted to unalive himself, and Dr. Quinn had to change her way of thinking and started talking about some of these issues. Was that a hint? Was that like TV producers throwing us a bone? Oh no. Oh, thank you. I see somebody saying thanks for doing this. You're welcome. I'm sorry I'm so late, but I've been struggling so bad with my eyes, and my disorder really wreaks havoc on my muscles, and when one doesn't work, they all don't work, and my eyes have been affected. So I thought it was Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman throwing us a bone, going, hey, look at this. It's the guy in the telegraph office having melancholia because of electrical overstimulation, basically, So in records, this was the first possible link for causal relationship that was noted. Dickens even noted it in 1858 when a mad, deaf, and dumb duo were being treated, and he noted they had both worked at the telegrapher's office, or the telegraph office. I guess they were both. What do you call them? They were the telegraph guys. At the same time, Beard, the half-deaf doctor that came later, he noted that by the late 1800s, the malaise had spread along the railroad and telegraph routes, affected both men and women, rich and poor, intellectual and not intellectual. Sufferers are also weather sensitive. It resembles a common cold. Hang on to that. It ran in families. It seized people in their prime. Hang on to that one too. It lowered one's tolerance to drugs and alcohol. Hang on to that too. Made people more prone to allergies and diabetes. And one thing that was medically noted in one of the issues that Beard wrote was that those suffering with, they called it neurasthesis, passed reddish and dark brown urine. It wasn't until Rudolph, I think his name is like Arnold, he finally made the connection between this neurasthenia and electricity. Now go back to the malaise that Beard noted. Resembles the common cold. Sufferers are also weather sensitive. Resembles the common cold. Now, back a few years ago, when the was going around, everybody was in their home. But at the same time that we were all separated, there seemed to be this viral contagion spreading rapidly across the earth. At the same time, spreading rapidly across the earth was new build towers for signal amplification and spreading. We can now look back and see that in the 1800s, when the telegraph and the railroad and all these new electrical components were being spread, that we also saw people suffer from weather sensitivity that resembled a common cold. It made people die in their prime. Those are probably the primary people that are in society daily and around things the most. Lowered their tolerance to drugs and alcohol. What did we see soon after that? We saw a resurgence in people overdosing. Across the globe, if you look at stats across the globe for drug and alcohol addiction and treatment, across the globe, we saw a huge rise in overdosing during and right after the pandemic. A lot of people said that was people that were resorting to drug use to basically deal with everything. Could it potentially have been that the amplification in the environment around us, the atmosphere around us, was making us more susceptible, as noted by Dr. Beard in the late 1800s with the telegraph and railroad and all that other crap? Who knows? Just a thought. I thought one thing that was funny, that as soon as the Rudolph guy finally made the connection between the two, between the neurasthenia and electricity, they renamed it to anxiety neurosis. And who renamed it? Freud. So when Freud came along and this Rudolph guy had conjoined everything and they had studied Rudolph and gone back, then when we get into the early 1900s, Freud goes, oh, well, all of a sudden, let's just change this to anxiety neurosis. So now we have all these neuroses that Freud, who I think was honestly just a giant pervert, that Freud, who was supposed to be the father of psychology, made this huge sermon. I have issues with Freud. I think he did a lot of weird wackadoodle things. I don't think anything he talked about was really coherent or followed the line of true intellect, but that's just me. My dog's now going to dream and yip and snore and bark. You know? Okay, so then in the 1920s, guess what? This medical stuff started to show up in China. At the same time, they were in a huge industrialization boom. And then 1930s in Russia, when they were also going through an industrialization boom. Gee, doesn't that all work together? Isn't that strange, y'all, how this neurasthenia had to then be separated, and they had to basically create, instead of weak nerves, they had to create a physiological and then a mental component to this. And they basically turned it into a manifestation rather than a real physiological thing. And then Freud comes by and wham, bam, it turns into anxiety neurosis. And ta-da, now it's all over the world as we mechanize and industrialize the entire world. Well, what's the only thing that we all had in common at that point? Electric was being amplified worldwide. This was just a lot of factual in these two chapters, a lot of factual stuff. And because the next chapter, which is, it goes into plants. And it's like electricity and the behavior of plants and stuff. I had to really make sure that I pulled the important stuff out of 4 and 5 because it was just so many facts and so many weird, like trajectory, like offshoots of the way people were looking at the time. But what I found profound in these two chapters was that they split the electrical illnesses into what they could say was, oh yeah, this is something to do with the body. Or no, this has something to do with the mind. And what is so funny is that all the issues that the electrical sensitivity created, they almost turned into the mind issues so that they could then turn it into anxiety neuroses, which then they could then basically plausible deniability, which irritates the holy bejesus out of me. Plausible deniability. And when did they do it? Right as the entire world began experiencing the sensitivities due to the electrical networking. They gave plausible deniability right at the same time. It's amazing. And I guess YouTube's mad at me because my chat's not moving anymore. But this is really interesting. I find this very interesting. So basically, since the late 1700s, early 1800s, we have known that the electrification and electrotherapies pulled from the electrification of science and medicine and the environment has altered the human body in many ways. And while some doctors and professors have made sure to do studies and profoundly link certain things, it's almost like the mainstream science has worked just as hard to create a disconnect or to create a mental health issue which didn't previously exist, so that they could file it away as not acceptable and to not stop their huge industrial component. And isn't it funny that another one of the big breaks in mental health, societal unrest, and biological health issues is seen at the same time worldwide. We see a huge jump in, the 5G, 6G, so many more towers built, and, the health issues that came at the same time. It almost seems to be repeating itself. So, is it the reason we're now seeing a huge instability in societies across the globe? Seems to be a theme. What irritates me is that they've had all of this information for hundreds of years, and instead of working to further understand it, all they've done, probably because they understand it quite well, what they've done is to work hard to further hide it. It's just frustrating to me. So anyway, that is chapters 4 and 5. And it was a lot for me to compost and to get through. Obviously, it's still a little bit more for me to read because my eyes are hurting today. But anyway, very interesting, chock full of things we probably didn't want to know and need to. And if you have a moment, please go and watch the last little video where I did just uploaded screenshots that Sabrina sent to me. Pause, zoom in, read them, screenshot them, zoom in, read them, take time with them, ponder, pontificate, expand upon them, and see what you bring out of it. Oh, thank you, Sherry. My chat moved. Yay. So it's just been a very illuminating experience to read this. Kind of frustrating at times too. And I'm sitting today on a weather line that is spawning storms, very unstable, and my disorder has been very unstable for the last several weeks when we've been in this same weather pattern. But I'm starting to understand things better, which just irritates me more. So that's where I am. I hope y'all are learning stuff as well. I'm going to go take a nap now because I have just not felt well the last little bit. I'm sure it's just my body needing rest from putting up the garden and dealing with some stuff and being super busy. But this book is also very dense factually, so it takes a lot to go through it. To just pull out the cliff notes for y'all, it is difficult on a good day, so bear with me as I go through this. But chapters 4 and 5 were kind of they're a jump off point to where now we're going to start getting into the real deep stuff. And I think as we go along, y'all are going to experience more frustration. Rather than shock and awe, you're going to get into the frustration. Prepare yourselves for it. And then maybe we'll get into the enlightenment. I'm still in the frustration. I'm ahead of you slightly, and I'm still in frustration mode. But we'll get there. We're trying. We're doing. And the book itself gives us a lot of all it is basically is a lot of timelines. Just scientific data put on a timeline so that we can look at it and see just how long these things have been known yet not taken action on. So it's frustrating, but it's also good to know. It's also very good to know. Thank you, Kelly. I appreciate that. We'll see how fast I get through the rest because I like to be a couple chapters ahead so I can make sure I'm pulling out exactly what you need to apply to the next couple of chapters. As my eyes improve, obviously, we'll be doing more and more. I am just having this disorder is just having a week. It's just having I call it a Stewart week. Look what I can do, and I just don't know what it's going to try to do next. So I'm just trying to rest a lot. So we'll see how I get through that. But yeah, just to reread my notes just kind of irritated me all over again. So once again, They say there's nothing new since the 1700s, yet when you start digging, you can see a lot of scientific data and experimentation that proves a lot of significant points that have a huge bearing on today's behaviors and medical diagnoses. And you can start to see the vernacular vocabulary change talking about this electrotherapy and electrification of society and how they tried to delineate it one of two ways, whether a biological issue or a neurological issue. But rather than looking at both those medically, they looked at one medically and one as a neurotic episode kind of slang. And I think that was to discredit those people that were linking electricity with those types of illnesses and to further discredit the study or findings thereof. As we can see now, we've had a few hundred years and we're still seeing the linking of the same issues and the exacerbation as the world becomes more electrified. And it can only be surmised that one is because of the other. If you look at logical, rational deduction, because as the world evolved and became mechanized and electrified, these same things spread worldwide that were previously unknown. There really is no other way to look at that. But people will want to put you in the crazy pool and say that you don't have a biological or a neurological illness, you have a neuroses. So here we go. This is the jump off point. Now we're getting into plants in the next one and getting into the highways. Really. So we'll see where we go from here. Just a very interesting book. Lots to compost, lots to get through. Oh my gosh. And also, if you haven't visited Dave's store, it's Etsy. It's etsy.com/shop/Hillbilly Heart Decor. I'm really wanting that $70-something book that goes with all this that we've been studying too. And the 3 hanging possums. Everybody said they wanted a hanging possum. They are actively in his store. They are actively in his store right now. I gave them to him so he could sell them because people said they wanted them. Also have this little bitty possum. He is about 3 rounds shy of gray because I was running out of the gray. But this is my little bitty possum. I did some face shaping on him, giving him a long nose. I thought he was cute. If anyone's interested in him, he will be $30 with free shipping. And you can email me at watersworkload@gmail.com. David can either put it on the store for a secure purchase or work with you for like a PayPal or something. But he's just like 3 rows shorter because I was running out of gray. He's a little snuggler. And his eyes are embroidered. Everything's embroidered, so he's kid safe. And then ask me what I'm working on right now. This is going to be hard to tell. But this is going to go on a wood round. And it's going to have its face shaped and some other stuff put on with ears and stuff. But it's going to be a jackalope that goes on a wood round. So it's going to look like taxidermy jackalope. But it's going to take a lot of face shaping and a lot more parts to sew on. It's got cheeks and nose and face shaping, and it's going to take a lot. So I'm very interested. I don't really like their antler pattern, but at the same time, I'm too lazy to come up with a better one right now because I'm tired. So he will be a jackalope soon. And then what else have I been working on? I got my other frog together. But this is my newbie. This is the grumpy frog. So I've been making them. They have long arms, long legs. They cross their arms. And I think they're a cute little shelf sitter. But the funny thing is I gave them butts. This is a grumpy frog. And they're all embroidered. So they're all kid safe too. That's what I'm working on. I've almost got the horn rattle done. I've got a few more things on the faux fur purse to clean. David was not able to get the lynx hide border to go through, but now they're talking about a coyote trapper hat that's got the ear flaps that have the feet on it. So it's a coyote face tail. They did the taxidermy work to put the eyes in it. It's actual trapper's hat with the ear flaps that's got feet on it. And then he's trying to get a fur throw, and I think it's mink. It's a conglomeration of mink and fox. Don't hold me to that. That's what's coming up in my mind. And so he's working with that guy to try to do that now. He's trying to get a couple other things possible in the barter. We work with some of our trapper friends that are in the upper Midwest and Pacific Northwest and the Great Plains, and we all do like a swap every year to get stuff that we can't trap or we can't get hold of in our areas. And we don't have a lot of the fur artist people that really do the weird stuff here. So we always try to get some weird stuff that we don't normally see. And he really wanted that lynx, but it just wasn't meant to be. So I'm excited to see what all he gets in this barter. He does maybe only 2 or 3 of these barters a year because we have smaller game, so we have to really put up a lot of the small game to get some of the larger pieces. So he only does this a couple, 3 times a year because, he's just one guy and he just traps 1 or 2 farms, and so he doesn't want to barter everything he traps away. But it's always interesting to get some weird stuff that we can't otherwise get our hands on. So yeah, that was interesting. Also had a very nice lady make this cow. It's a steer horn ring, and I thought that was very sweet of her. It's very comfortable. It's very light. I do have a lot of steer horns that I'm thinking, could I make a steer horn ring too? Obviously, it'd have to be a really good hand day to use the Dremel and sand everything down and polish and shine. Don't know. Maybe something just my hands at this stage of the game will not do. But I thought that was very sweet of her and very pretty. It is very pretty. If you like this, I can send you the link to her Etsy store. She does some really beautiful bone and antler and horn jewelry. Very pretty. But if you want it, just in the comments when this loads, say, yes, I want the link to that ring, and I'll send you to her Etsy store. Sweet woman, and I really like it. It's made very, very well. And it's not super heavy because it's a steer horn, so it's very light. Antler would be much heavier, which she does have. But this is, for me, and my disorder with my hands, I can't feel it hardly at all. So this is very nice. And, of course, I wouldn't recommend it until I've worked for a couple of times, so I really like it. I like that it's not super perfect. You can still see the imperfections in the horn, but it's very pretty and polished to a nice clean. I like that. So David's in the bartering and process of the year, and he's also starting the tanning process and stuff. So he's got stuff coming out. He's got some deer hides and some other stuff going to be coming up. And but he likes to barter a couple of times, see what we can get. So that's what he's working on. We'll see if it happens. I'm sure they'll end up in his store if he gets them. We always enjoy this swap because we can't really travel out there, so we enjoy the guys that actually contact us and want to do these swaps every year. So very sweet people. It's just interesting to kind of be the chaperones of these fur pieces until they find their new homes. So especially some of them that are older and have a lot of history with them. I am hoping he does get the fur throw blanket because we've had a lot of people wanting blankets. It's not something that I'm willing to sit down and do. I'm not willing to cut up all the garment quality fur he has and strip it and line it and bind it. I'm just not. Even though my mother has an industrial sewing machine that would do it, it's just not something I want to do. So I'm hoping he does get this fur throw so that it'd be something we can offer to the people that have been begging us for a throw without me having to make it, because I'm like, I can't do that. That's too much. I know my limit. That's my limit. So other than that, things are just rolling on, and I'm just dealing with a little bit of a tough spot with my disorder right now, but it's okay. And we'll roll on to chapter 6 next. I appreciate you spending time with me and being interested in all this. And also go check out Sabrina on the Odyssey platform at Synergy, PSINERGY. You can also catch her on a Ko-Fi under Synergy as well. You can also follow on Vaxxer420 on Rumble, and D as in ABCD, the Mind of Boomason on Rumble as well. He did an interview with Sabrina a little while ago. It's like over 2 hours. It's great. If you're not aware of her work, go watch it. It's Miss Sabrina Wallace, and we should be having contact with her in the near future. I'm in contact with her quite a bit, but we're trying to get her on the channel. Like I said, she's in a very high research kind of restructuring phase in life right now and doing a lot of work for you. So when we get her, but she's doing well, and she's much happier without all the trolls coming after her. And Ko-Fi has given her a little bit of a fence to stop the trolls, and it's really alleviated a lot of the aggression she was feeling. So it's doing wonderful things. She's opened up a lot of time for the positive things now, and she's less terrified about putting herself out on different platforms, because now they can't follow her back home per se, because she put up the paywall on Ko-Fi, and it's a tiny $5 paywall, and it's worth every cent. Ko-Fi hates me and won't let me have an account because they think because my family traps and tans were graphic, horrible people, yet they let women sell their frozen underwear. Go figure. You got to see the humor in life, So everybody, I appreciate how I see my usuals. Everybody, appreciations. That's all for today. I'm going to go rest. I am feeling slowly better. I'm just extremely tired. Me and Luna need a nap. She's already started hers. So I'm going to get caught up, and I'm going to join her in a nap. Y'all have a wonderful day. Chapter 6 will be on its way as soon as I get the next couple finished and see what I need to pull out. Kelly, I don't know. I'll have to look into it. If anybody's in the Pennsylvania area, you might want to look into that. Hi, Sal, everybody. Okay, y'all have a good day. I'm going to go look up that Pennsylvania thing, see if there's anything to it. Who knows what's going on today? The world is a crapshoot. It's a carnival where everybody's games are rigged. Except for the politicians and the carnies, and normally that's society's lowest tier. But I digress. Good way to end. Bye, guys.